Welcome to Highland Waves, a podcast originating from Marshbrook Studios, located beside the world-renowned Margaree River in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada. Highland Waves feature stories primarily about the people, but sometimes about the places within Inverness County. I'm Pat Wall, host of Highland Waves, and this morning our guest, Maria Coady, will talk to us about an exciting new initiative, the possibility of a new aquatic centre in our community. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Pat.
And welcome to Highland Waves.
Thank you.
Maria is a public health nurse in the region and also the secretary of the Margaret Environmental Association, for proponents of the Cape Breton West Aquatic Centre project. Maria, who and what is the Margaret Environmental Association?
Well, thank you for asking that. The Margaree Environmental Association is very much a grassroots association. We've been in existence for 40 plus years. We are a registered, not-for-profit organization, and we have a very informed board of directors who are citizens that live in the Margaree area, and actually the watershed area of the Margaree River is how we actually define where our board membership comes from. So we have people with a lifelong experience in a lot of areas, in environmental activism, in health, in all kinds of engineering. So we have a really solid background. So that's what Margaree Environmental Association is. And our mandate has been, for these 40 years, that we work to ensure human and environmental health and protection. And that spans a very broad range of possible areas that our association would take interest in. So that's kind of the broad strokes of who we are.
Okay, well, thank you. What do you consider your major successes?
Okay, well, I'm not sure if you would remember, but there was, up in Lake Ainsley, there was an effort to develop fracking in Lake Ainsley to test for, to bring oil to the surface, and I would say we were quite instrumental, the Margaree Environmental Association, in stopping the fracking, and in fact going as far as having a moratorium placed on fracking in Nova Scotia. And so we also collaborate with environmental organizations right across Atlantic Canada. And so that is one area. Another recent thing as being on the forestry front, Department of Natural Resources or Forestry, they keep changing their name, so I'm never sure what their current name is, but Department of Forestry releases their planned cuts for each year, and Brian Peters, one of the co-chairs of the organization, actually knew that area and realized that there was an old Acadian forest in there that was slated to be harvested. And so this is another area where we were able to go and mobilize people and have them remove that from their planned clear cutting, that area. So those are just a couple of the areas that we've been involved in.
Have you been involved in a project of this nature in the past?
No, not in particular. So yeah, there was quite a learning curve for many of us in terms of, we're certainly well versed in putting together applications and talking with government partners and NGOs. But no, I would say that this is a bit different from the work that we traditionally have been doing. But as I say, we have a very strong board who have a lot of different kinds of expertise, and we're able to provide the confidence that we could go forward with this initiative.
When you say you have people on your board who have a lot of experience in what fields?
Well, for example, Brian, he has a lot of experience in the area of alternative energy. Neil Livingston, the other co-chair, also has a lot of experience in alternative energy, so their knowledge depth is quite deep in all the areas of policies and procedures that we really are always urging our government to follow, to be less dependent on fossil fuels and more dependent on other forms of energy. We have healthcare workers on our board that bring that expertise to the table, and we have a retired lawyer that provides us that kind of perspective. And then just some people with just really good lifelong experience and knowledge of issues and of the area that we work in, which is primarily the watershed area of the Margaree Heritage River.
Okay. What is the connection between Margaree Environmental Association and the Cape Breton West Aquatic Center?
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways, it seems like a natural, because as I said, our mandate is to ensure human and environmental health and protection. So, the health needs of the citizens of Cape Breton West are definitely on our mind, and that is why there's a lot of the, campaigns that we join to try to ensure that our environment that our citizens live in are healthy and pristine. On the other hand, from an energy perspective and from the out-of-control climate crisis that we're facing now, we felt that wouldn't it be great to have an example or have a model that governments could in fact adopt for public buildings so that it's carbon neutral, like net zero. So we felt that we could possibly do two things, which is work on an effort that would provide opportunities for our citizens to take some action to remain healthy, and at the same time provide a real solid model or example of what it could look like, because right now in Nova Scotia, we do not have any public buildings or facilities that are carbon neutral. So that is what led us to this, and the rest, as they say, is history. We learned about funding, and we moved from there.
Okay. So what was really the inspiration for an aquatic center?
I would say, from somebody that's born and raised and lived in Margaree most of my life, there have been efforts over the years. Since I was a young mom, there have been families, there have been individuals that have been kind of digging their heels in and saying, we really should have a swimming pool that we can teach our children to swim, that our fishermen and the people that make their living on the seas can have confidence in the water for themselves and for rescuing others, and that I feel personally that our communities have been overlooked far too long for such a facility. It's always going to larger areas, and I've certainly been involved in a lot of applications trying to bring something like this to our community, and we get overlooked. We get overlooked for a number of reasons. One is because our rural population, because some people feel we don't have a population that could support this. And certainly in terms of a swimming pool, I would see councillors' eyes glazing over them when we would talk about that, because they're thinking about the operational costs of not just building this facility, but the operation of it down the years, and they do not want to look at that. So this is, we feel, very different in that we're thinking about down the road. We're thinking about after a facility like this could be built. That we do, in fact. The operational costs can be really minimalized by really thinking about the building envelope, thinking about the technology, and having the energy costs contained, because that seems to be a big issue with a lot of the decision makers in government.
Okay. Leaving aside the health benefits for now,
okay,
what other reasons is this center important?
Aside from health benefits, well, I think pure enjoyment. As I said, there has always been an advocate in the community showing up at our county council, pushing this idea. I can remember it since a long time ago. So I think just to have a facility that we don't have to drive 2 hours to get to, that is year-round, that we can have for our enjoyment, to bring community together, and something that we can really be proud of, which if this comes to fruition, I think we as a community will really be proud of this. And I think also, I think of all the young children that are trying to squeeze in people's backdoor pools to try to learn to swim, and they have a small window of time to try to learn, or else they have to drive long distances to get to pools. So one of the people in our community said, arenas used to be the answer. They would build arenas because they felt everyone had a right to learn to skate. And we're saying everyone has a right to swim. And living in a coastal area, surrounded by the sea, it seems like a no-brainer. So I just think that it is a facility that can bring us together. And it will be more than swimming as well, The community, there's an advisory committee, as I speak, being formed, and a lot of people are interested in joining this committee, and they all have great ideas for this facility aside from swimming. So that probably will be the centerpiece, but there'll be a lot of other opportunities for people. A place for an early childhood center, which is something that's desperately needed in our community. So I think I don't want to, guess what people are going to say when we sit down with citizens and talk to them about what their ideas and aspirations are. But
the one thing politicians look at when they're reviewing proposals of this nature, at least from my experience, has been jobs. And this particular facility down the road, when it becomes a reality, will provide jobs as well to people within the community. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely, because there would be certainly every day that responsibilities in terms of the operation of it, a system worked out to allow people to come to the pool. Then, as I say, there'll be workout areas, yoga studios. There's all kinds of possibilities, early childhood center. So there would be jobs. And of course, up front, the construction of the facility would also be, would provide some employment. But when it's up and running, there will be a set number of employees, and we've certainly collaborated with a number of other communities that have swimming pools, and one of the ones that we looked at very closely is in East Hants, which is near the airport, the Halifax airport, and we spoke to the municipality and the technical people that put that swimming pool together, and certainly jobs was something that are created there. I see no reason why they wouldn't be created at this facility as well.
You've touched basically on other areas that this could encompass, early childhood, those kinds of things. but there is the possibility maybe of having a blood collection place in there, maybe instructions for yoga, for those kinds of exercise programs. Is that under consideration?
I would say that anything is possible. We had a public meeting about 10 days ago. There was almost 100 people, maybe more, at this facility. Everybody very keen, and a lot of ideas were tossed out that night about what this could mean to our community. So the things that you've suggested, certainly, and a lot of other things. So I think what actually will be under the roof and around the facility is going to be entirely what our community wants and feels they need. And I think, the suggestion you had of like there could be a small area where we could do things like blood collections, like we used to do when we had a doctor's office in Margaree. Foot care clinics could be in there. All kinds of primary health care preventative things could be hosted in there. There's, I think, a myriad of possibilities. But again, it will be what I believe the community feels are their greatest needs. Would really like to see some kind of connection with our school so that we could have ensure that all the children, maybe part of their phys ed program would be actually swimming in this facility, learning to swim, learning different kinds of activities. People have talked about a walking track inside, which sounds like a great idea, inside and outside for when the weather would allow it. And I think there's just a lot of, there'll be a hot tub, and there'll be a place where people can just hang out in warm water. And, I think it'll be possibly a new meeting place for our community.
Well, that's great because, you talk to people in the community and they say, well, we wish we had this and we wish we had that. And I think you probably, going forward, we will have some public meetings where you can get some ideas from the people in the community, and that's a great thing, I think. Getting back to the building itself, the design is a very important component of this, and particularly in this day and age when we're looking at carbon neutral, getting rid of fossil fuels, etc. So can you tell me a little bit about the design and what that encompasses and how it's going to help with the operational costs down the road, both from an environmental standpoint and from a financial standpoint?
Yes. And again, I'll just preface it by saying that that is not exactly my strength, that technical side, but I've been sitting in with meetings. I helped put the proposal together, and so I have kind of a bit of basic understanding. But what I can tell you is that this funding came from the provincial government to fund this feasibility study. So that's Natural Resources and Renewables of Nova Scotia, and they have a stream called Low Carbon Communities. So they're seeking some expertise, some solutions to the issues of getting away from non-renewables. So as we began putting together this feasibility study, we looked at some examples right across the world of, how the swimming pool, how it was born, the history, things we could learn from their experiences. We looked very carefully at the East Hants aquaculture, the Aquatic Center in East Hants near the airport. And what Margaret Environmental Association hired an engineering firm to do what we call energy modeling. So this firm is called CBCL. One of their top engineers was born and raised in Margaree and knew the landscape and was incredibly excited about this possibility. So they looked at the East Hants Center and they applied a spectrum of efficiencies and conservation measures to determine, is it possible that we could reduce the energy consumption, because we had all the information from East Hants, reduce that energy consumption by 50%. And so they came back and they said that roof and ground area of the design we were looking at would be large enough so that solar panels could generate 600,000 kilowatt hours a year. And this could be applied, this thinking was applied to all the sites that our feasibility study looked at. And as you know, then if we produce extra energy, that would go into the grid, and then at times when we might not produce enough energy, we will get power off the grid. But at the end of the day, we're going to end at zero, so that we have net zero carbon. So that is part of the thinking, and this engineering firm really looked at what they called the building sleeve, I think they called it, and everything will be considered. They're talking about the water, that the water, once it goes into the pool and recycled around, what they can do with that water, how we can take water off the roof and just use that water. Every single aspect of this facility has been reviewed by this engineering firm, so that all the decisions are made at the construction site. And as it turns out, the East Hants Center wishes now that they used that lens when they were constructing their facility, because they have huge energy costs and they have very little energy efficient approaches there. And they really, and when we ask them why, they say when you're given the money and you have to build it, you just build it.
Yeah.
And you don't think about down the road. And now they're seeing.
Right.
So they're quite excited about what we're doing. I think a lot of people are looking at it, and we've actually gotten quite a few inquiries from various government agencies wanting the study, wanting to look at it, and want to understand how this is possible.
Are there any other facilities that are using this technology in Nova Scotia, in Canada?
No, not in Nova Scotia, not in Atlantic Canada. We looked at 2 aquatic facilities in British Columbia. We looked at 1 in Italy. We looked at 1 in Newfoundland, and we looked at several in Nova Scotia. And no. So, on one level, we have to appreciate and understand why decision makers, their eyes glaze over when you talk about aquatic center. So it's going to require a lot of, I hate to use the word educating, but we're really going to have to make sure that our decision makers, our Member of Parliament, our MLA, all of these people understand what it is we're doing, and that this is the direction we must go.
Yeah. The key component is carbon neutral.
Yes.
That's
yes.
very important.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What is the estimated cost of the building itself?
The initial construction is around $35 million.
And the operating cost?
Well, I'm sorry, I can't give you that. I'm not sure what that would be, but we think it can be recovered locally.
Okay.
We can be recovered by memberships, by other opportunities, fundraising opportunities under the roof of the building, but the energy is what scares people off, the energy costs. And we get this right, even in Cape Breton West, it can be done. If we get it right, it is going to be a model for across the country.
That's wonderful. I understand there are some locations that have been suggested.
Yes.
Where are they?
Okay, so we looked at the Strait Area Pool in Port Hawkesbury. Oh, the actual locations for the, okay, let me see if I can find those in my, my information here. The old high school grounds.
In Margaree Forks.
Yes, at Route 19.
Okay.
Okay, where the school used to be. Now that's owned privately, but we've had discussions with that owner. And so that is one possibility. It was looked at, and they applied, the engineering firm applied their thinking to that location. Also, there is property that was owned by the Margaree Lodge that is down on the riverbed, near the river.
Where the old golf course used to be.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So that was another possibility. Another one that we spent quite a lot of time, because we thought it would be a great facility, is just at Margaree Forks, right at the Margaree Forks Bridge, opposite Coady Road and opposite the creamery. There is a what used to be the ball field, the soccer field. That was a place that we were very excited about, because they developed, there's new ownership. Some folks from Ontario bought that, and they seemed very keen. And then the final place would be, we looked at, is it possible to somehow connect with the school at Cape Breton Highlands Academy as another location?
Sounds like you've done your homework in terms of locations, but why Margaree Forks itself?
Okay, I was hoping you'd ask that. Well, first of all, I feel incredibly committed to our communities, not being overlooked one more time for something like this. Why also? Because when you look at the catchment areas, there is Shetty Camp. Shetty Camp has almost 3,000 people that live in Shetty Camp.
It's the largest community within Inverness County.
Yes. So you have Shetty Camp and all the way up. Then you have Inverness, you have Bedeck. And if you saw a copy of our feasibility study, there's a map there that shows how Margaree Forks geographically and population-wise is very central in terms of moving people and having a location. Inverness, it surprised us that the Bedeck population was 800. I think Inverness population is a little over 1,000. Margaree has a fairly sizable population compared to, we're around 2,200, the Margarees. So why not Margaree? The only stickler right now will be finding a site with good water,
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because the facility in Port Hawksmith, may I understand, is saltwater pool.
Yes.
So you haven't got access here to saltwater, although you have, it's a long way away.
Yes.
And traditionally, the Margaree area has been known for, groundwater is not very very plentiful in many of the areas. But I guess that's a consideration that the engineers are working on.
Yes, it is. And when we had our public meeting, that was certainly brought up by a number of community citizens present, that what about the water? And so we put it back to them and said, please, if you know of a place that you know there's bountiful water, that we would certainly have a big bearing on a location. So we have had a number of people come back to us since that public meeting and say, did you consider this spot? Did you consider this spot? So ideas are coming in. And the thing with the salt water is a great idea. We have somebody that wants to be on our advisory committee that's involved with a swimming pool that it's actually at Acadia. They have a saltwater swimming pool. And so you can use certain kinds of water and then you add the salt to it. So that if the water wasn't the purest or there's some issue with it, perhaps by adding saline to it would make it so that it's going to work. Again, on some of these issues I'm a little vague on because I'm not totally clear on a lot of those things, and we really hope to get guidance from our community because there's a lot of interest, like unbelievable interest. Not one person in that room the night we had our public meeting said it's not a good idea or they thought we were crazy. And there's lifelong learning, so much experience, and, just good common sense. And we're hoping to benefit from all of that.
That's great. I just have one question with respect to the area that this will serve. Probably from Judic probably to Pleasant Bay, and
yes.
That would be a reasonable assumption.
Inverness, Mabou.
Yeah, all through that area.
For sure. Waikagama.
Yeah. Do you have a population sample as to how many at this stage?
Do you know what? I don't have that in front of me, but I know that Conrad Taves, who is he's an architect, but he's also done a lot of other community work. He was the guy that was the coordinator of this, and he has all of that. And if anybody wants a copy of the feasibility study, they would find all that information in the feasibility study, and you just contact our organization, and we're sending that out to anybody that wants it. Plus, there'll be hard copies at the local library.
Great. As a public health nurse, could you elaborate on the benefits to the community of this facility?
Absolutely. So, the first thing I would say is that skiing and skating is great for a lot of people, but when you have a chronic disease, you probably can't get out on skates. Maybe you can't even get out on skis. You can, in many instances, walk. But in Atlantic Canada, we have a very high burden of chronic disease. 2/3 of every Nova Scotian surveyed said that they have at least one chronic disease. And I'm talking about things such as high blood pressure, osteoporosis, heart disease, the effects of stroke, diabetes, all of these in Atlantic Canada and in the rural areas of Atlantic Canada, such as Cape Breton West, we have a lot of chronic disease. So that's number one. Number two is that 42% of the population in the catchment area we're talking about are seniors. And when you become senior, you get a little sedentary, you're not as active. And that is absolutely inviting chronic disease when that happens. Also, the burden, economic burden of chronic diseases on our healthcare system. I just did a quick search. It was $354 million for 1 year in Nova Scotia. It is not the magic bullet, but the opportunity for year-round physical activity in a swimming pool is going to I really believe it's really going to help people to take more control, because now they know there's something they can do. They can go to the local pool and they can work out. We know that the effects of swimming, low impact, is so great for when you have a joint replacement, that you can go there and do your workout. Perhaps we'll be able to bring physiotherapists and occupational therapists to these facilities to work with people as they're recovering. So I think that that's a no-brainer as well, that the Aquatic Center equals more health for our community.
And if it's here, they'll come.
Yes, if it's here, they'll come, for sure.
Are you satisfied with the study?
Yes, in fact, it was painful. It's been a year in the making, and it's sometimes been painful, and I just thought, oh, come on, let's just get on with it. But all the talking to people and the expertise that we gathered, it's clear that this is a really solid document, and it is getting noticed. One other last thing I'd just like to point out is the municipality, Inverness County Municipality, recently launched a huge, big research plan for a recreational master plan for Inverness County, and they surveyed a sizable number of people. The number one activity people wanted was to be able to swim. And the number 2 thing was they wanted access to an accessible year-round facility. So that it's not just 2 or 3 months of the year, but it's year-round. And so that further validates what we're doing.
So your response has been very good so far.
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, could you tell people where they can get more information?
Okay. So if you can... I don't have it right on me, but in the Inverness ORAN, we ran several ads, and in that ad gives our address. And we encourage people to just drop us off a quick email and say that you would like a copy of the document. And the reason why we're not uploading it somewhere is because it's a really large document. We are also getting about 150 copies printed, and they can go to the library and they'll be able to get copies. Or they can simply find me in the phone book and call me, and we'll get a copy to them.
Well, good luck, Maria, with this, and thank you for sharing that information with our listeners this morning. And thank you to our listeners for being with us. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date. And remember, the future is hope. So long for now, Pat.